Lyra Voss had always known she was different from the wolves around her. She was not born into a noble line. Her mother had been a healer, and her father had died young, leaving Lyra to grow up learning how to survive on very little. She never imagined that her life would change the night the moon chose her as the mate of the most powerful wolf in the land, Alpha King Draven Ashford. The night of the announcement, the whole territory had gathered under the silver light of the full moon. Draven stood tall on the stone platform, his eyes sharp and commanding, his presence enough to silence a crowd of thousands. When the elders called out that the moon had marked Lyra as his fated mate, gasps rippled through the crowd. She was a servant's daughter. She was not supposed to matter to a king. Draven did not smile when he looked at her. He only nodded once, a cold and unreadable gesture, before turning back to his advisors. Lyra told herself it was only shock. Even kings needed time to accept something as large as fate. She held on to that hope for days, even as whispers followed her everywhere she walked. It was 3 nights before the official mating ceremony when Lyra overheard the truth. She had gone to the kitchens near the royal hall to fetch herbs for her mother, who still served as a healer within the castle grounds. As she passed by a servants' corridor, she heard voices behind a half-closed door. One of them belonged to Draven. "She is not suited to stand beside me," he said, his voice low but firm. "The packs expect someone of noble blood. I will accept her before the council, then reject her the same night. It will be quick, painless." Lyra's chest tightened as though someone had reached inside and squeezed her heart. Painless, he had said. He believed it would be painless. He did not understand that being publicly claimed, and then publicly discarded, in front of every pack leader in the land, would follow her for the rest of her life. It was not something she could simply walk away from with her dignity intact. She did not wait to hear more. She turned and walked quickly back through the corridors, her mind spinning with a decision she had not expected to make so soon. That night, Lyra sat alone in the small room she shared with her mother, staring at the flickering candle on the table. She thought about the ceremony, about standing in front of thousands of wolves, only to be humiliated by the very man fate had chosen for her. She thought about the years of whispers that would follow, the way her name would become a warning to other low-born wolves who dared to hope for more than what they were given. She made her choice before the candle burned out. She would not wait to be rejected. She would leave before he had the chance to do it in front of everyone. Lyra packed only what she could carry easily: a warm cloak, a few strips of dried meat, a small knife her father had left her, and the herbs her mother had taught her to use for healing and for hiding a scent trail. She left a short letter for her mother, promising she would return when it was safe, and asking her not to worry. Then, just before dawn, she slipped out through the old servants' gate that led into the forest beyond the castle walls. She ran through the night without looking back, crossing streams to hide her trail, and moving through dense trees where trackers would struggle to follow. By the time the sun rose fully into the sky, she had crossed into a stretch of land known as the Wildlands, a place with no ruling pack, where wolves who had lost their homes or been cast out gathered to survive on their own terms. The Wildlands were nothing like the castle grounds she had grown up near. There was no grand hall, no soldiers standing guard, no rules enforced by an alpha's word. Instead, small groups of wolves lived in makeshift shelters built from branches and stone, sharing what little food they had, and trusting almost no one. Lyra understood immediately that survival here would require more than fear. It would require skill. She found a group of wolves camped near a shallow river, a mix of orphaned pups, elderly wolves too weak to keep up with larger packs, and young wolves who had simply given up on belonging anywhere. When one of the younger pups fell ill with a fever, Lyra used the herbs she carried to bring the fever down within a day. Word spread quickly through the camp. By the end of the week, wolves who had once eyed her with suspicion began asking for her help instead. Lyra did not tell anyone who she truly was. She simply became known as the healer who had wandered into the Wildlands from nowhere, asking for nothing in return but a place to stay. Weeks passed, and the camp grew. Wolves who had heard rumors of a healer with steady hands and a calm voice began arriving from other struggling groups nearby. Lyra found herself organizing more than just medicine. She helped settle disputes between wolves who distrusted each other, She taught them how to store food properly before the colder months arrived. She showed the younger wolves how to track and hunt safely, without drawing attention from rival packs. Then, one evening, a group of raiders from a nearby rogue pack attacked the camp, hoping to steal supplies from wolves too weak to fight back. Lyra did not run. She gathered the strongest wolves in the camp, positioned them near the narrow paths leading into the camp, and organized a defense that caught the raiders off guard. By the time the raiders retreated, not a single wolf from the camp had been seriously harmed. That night was the turning point. Wolves who had once seen Lyra as simply a kind healer now saw her as something more. She had protected them. She had led them. She had done what no alpha in their broken histories had ever bothered to do. She had cared enough to keep them safe. Word of the healer who commanded loyalty without ever asking for it began to spread beyond the wildlands. Smaller packs, tired of the Alpha King's distant rule and the constant fighting between territories, began sending messengers to find her. They did not ask her to save them from illness. They asked her to lead them. Lyra was hesitant at first. She had come to the wildlands to disappear, not to build something new. But as more packs arrived, each one struggling under leaders who had failed them, she began to understand that she had a chance to build something the old system had never offered. A place where wolves were valued for what they contributed, not for the blood they were born into. Within a few months, 5 packs had united under her guidance, each one choosing to follow her, not because fate had demanded it, but because she had earned their trust through action. They called her their queen, a title she had never asked for and never expected, but one she wore with quiet determination. News eventually reached Draven, though it took time to reach the castle walls. At first, he dismissed the rumors as nothing more than exaggerated stories from the wildlands, a place he had always considered beneath his attention. But when 3 more packs from his own territory began quietly aligning themselves with the healer-turned-queen instead of him, he could no longer ignore what was happening. He learned the truth slowly, piece by piece, through servants who whispered when they thought he could not hear. The healer uniting the wildlands packs was the same wolf he had planned to reject. The same wolf who had vanished the night before the ceremony, leaving behind nothing but a torn pack mark and an empty room. Draven felt something he had not expected to feel: shame. He had assumed Lyra would simply disappear into obscurity, grateful perhaps that she had been spared public embarrassment. He had not imagined she would build an entire alliance strong enough to challenge the very structure he ruled. He set out for the wildlands with a small group of advisors, telling himself he was going only to assess the threat to his territory. But as he traveled, he could not stop thinking about the way Lyra had looked at him the night of the announcement, hopeful despite everything she had already endured in her life. He had taken that hope and planned to crush it without a second thought. When Draven finally arrived at the heart of the wildlands, he found a camp unlike anything he expected. It was not grand or built from stone, but it was organized, peaceful, and clearly thriving. Wolves moved with purpose, greeting each other with respect rather than fear. At the center of it all, seated calmly among a council of 5 pack leaders, was Lyra. She did not rise when she saw him. She did not bow her head the way she once might have. She simply looked at him, her expression calm and unreadable, much like his own had been the night she was chosen. "You came a long way for someone you were prepared to reject," she said. Draven had prepared many things to say, but none of them felt adequate in that moment. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice quieter than the commanding tone he was known for. "I let pride guide my decisions instead of judgment. I did not see what you were capable of, because I never gave myself the chance to know you." The council members around Lyra watched carefully, some with open suspicion, others simply curious to see how their queen would respond to the king who had once dismissed her. Lyra rose slowly, her posture steady. "I did not build this to prove something to you," she said. "I built it because these wolves needed someone who would not abandon them. I am not the same wolf you plan to reject in front of a crowd. I do not need your acceptance to know my own worth." Draven nodded, understanding settling over him fully for the first time. "I am not here to demand anything from you," he said. "I came to see if there was any place for me in the future you have built, not as a king expecting loyalty, but as someone asking for a chance to earn it." The camp fell silent, waiting for her answer. Lyra studied him for a long moment, weighing his words against everything she had learned about strength, loyalty, and self-respect since the night she had run from the castle. "If you wish to stay," she finally said, "you will stay as an equal, not as a ruler expecting deference. You will listen before you speak. You will earn trust, the same way every wolf here has earned mine, through actions, not titles." Draven agreed without hesitation, something in his expression softening in a way none of his advisors had ever witnessed before. In the months that followed, Draven remained in the Wildlands, learning from the community Lyra had built, rather than trying to reshape it into something familiar to him. He helped train wolves in defense, using skills he had learned as a warrior, while Lyra continued guiding the Alliance with the same quiet strength that had brought them all together in the first place. Their bond grew slowly, built not on the fate that had first connected them, but on mutual respect earned through patience and honesty. Lyra never forgot the pain of almost being rejected in front of everyone she knew, and Draven never forgot the lesson her strength had taught him. True leadership was not about blood or titles, but about the willingness to protect those who depended on you. Years later, when travelers spoke of Lyra, they no longer called her the healer who wandered into the Wildlands, nor the wolf who was almost rejected by a king. They called her the queen, who built her own kingdom from nothing, proving that worth was never something given by another person's approval. It was something built through courage, through kindness, and through the simple choice to keep moving forward, even when the world expected her to disappear. And every pack that had once doubted her now called her their queen, not because fate had demanded it, but because she had earned it, one act of quiet strength at a time.